Um, all right. Well, John May, welcome to the Farm Traveler Podcast. How are you doing, man?
Very good. Thank you. Thanks
So
for having
you
me.
were you were with a super cool company. It sounds like Carbon Robotics, and we'll talk about that in a second. But kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got started working with Carbon Robotics.
My education is in mechanical engineering, and then I've been doing robotics for a super long time. Most recently, I was working at a company up in Mukilteo that provided robots for Boeing and Lockheed Martin and all those guys to build their airplanes to basically fasten the skins to their substructure. And when Paul reached out, he, you know, his background is software. This is our founder and CEO. He was looking for somebody to do the hardware. So when I found out about his mission, it matched with what I've always been wanting to do. Something better for the world, and better for like humans, basically. So I jumped like right at the first chance.
That's cool. Yeah. So I looked at the website, and basically the whole thing with Carbon Robotics, it's a 10,000 pound autonomous robot, and basically it eradicates weeds using lasers,
hmm
which I mean is super neat. So you're talking about that's better for the world. So kind of what was the inspiration behind it, behind this weeder, and what was the whole process of kind of developing it to where it is now, to where you guys have actually got like the full system going. So what was that whole production process like?
Um, I guess so. You want to start from like where did the idea come from?
Sure.
Um, so our CEO, Paul, he wanted to start a company. He started a bunch of tech companies that did really, really great. And then he went over and worked at Uber for quite some time on their
Mm.
AI and deep learning. But he wanted to get into robotics. It was just like this realm he hadn't been in and wanted to do it. So he was going to sell his airplane and basically focus on that. And he ended up selling it to a farmer. And that farmer and him started talking about, you know, if they were to do something in farming, like what would be the most helpful thing? And they looked at a whole bunch of different aspects to farming and found that weeding is like the number one pain point. It's a huge cost for their operation, both in conventional and organic. And so they kind of looked at what's out there. They saw other basically cultivating robots and said, well, we don't want to do the same thing as everybody else. So let's figure out a way to do this like using deep learning and using whatever crazy new technologies are out there. And I think they just maybe stumbled upon the idea of laser weeding, and then it just took off from there. Um, so it was pretty cool. Like I
Oh no.
joined, and they basically had a laser on a wood cart, and then they're like, "Can you make this? You know, shoot the ground?" And so we got some mirrors, started practicing aiming, and it was like pretty clear right away that you can kill weeds with lasers.
That's so cool. Yeah, I mean, right now it's so pricey to spray pesticide, and of course, I mean, it's not the best for the environment. Depends on what you're spraying, and I
hmm
mean, depending on your crop, you might have to spray it over and over and over again. And so, what kind of like lasers is this using? I mean, I'm imagining it's not like your Death Star laser where it will blow up everything in its path. But so, how
Yeah.
powerful are these lasers that are kind of destroying those weeds?
So these are the same. This type of laser is a CO2 laser. So it's a glass tube that's basically CO2 gas with some other gases like helium, um, and you run electricity through it, and it excites um, photons to exit out one side. They bounce around inside this thing, and there's only one way out, so you can aim it. Um, and that is 150 watts. And so this laser could be used with some different focusing elements to cut steel or aluminum or wood, um, but we defocus it to help with our accuracy, killing the weeds. And it takes 250 milliseconds up to 2000 milliseconds, so 2 seconds to kill a weed,
Oh wow!
depending on
So,
its size.
okay, so what exact part of the weed is it targeting? Like the leaves or the root
No,
structure? What exactly is it targeting?
yeah, we originally started by basically doing this like quote unquote eraser mode, where we would basically burn the entire weed, and we
Mm,
just found that to take way too long. We talked with some biologists at the University of Washington and learned that you really just need to kill the meristem. So there's the undifferentiated meristematic cells basically at the center. Like if you look at a generic weed like pigweed, you can see it. It's directly in the middle. That's where new
Okay.
leaves are coming up and out.
Okay, gotcha. And so what's kind of the average do you guys have, like, an average per acre on how quick it can destroy weeds in an acre of area?
Yeah, so roughly, you could say like half an acre an hour up to like two, depending on the weed density. If it's a field that's crazy weedy, like they didn't control it the season before and it just got out of control, you're going to be on the lower end, like half an acre an hour. But if you've done a good job, but you're just tidying up the field, you can go up, 2 acres an hour or so.
Okay, that's pretty good. So,
Yeah, it's great.
how exactly does deep learning kind of play a role into this? Because I'm imagining the whole system is learning what a weed looks like. Because of course it'll be bad if it targets the actual plants and destroys your whole crop.
Hmm.
And so, how exactly is
Hmm.
deep learning playing a role into that?
So the kind of like go-to analogy for me is, how like Facebook, if you look at your pictures on Facebook, it can identify your face, or maybe it
Hmm.
identifies like your brother, and it's like, is this Ashton? Um, so it does that by getting just a ton of examples, and so that's what we do when we get to a new region or a new crop. We get examples of it. It really only takes about 100 images, which is actually pretty amazing because that's solely due to like our CTO Alex Sergeev, who's just one of the country's best deep learning guys. He also came from Uber, but we get 100 pictures, like day one, and then we label, this is pigweed, this is purslane, those are types of weeds, and then we'll label, this is spinach. We'll click actually where those things are for about 100 images, and then we do a thing called training. Basically, you're just reinforcing, um, the algorithm to make choices along the way that end up in the result of, this is a weed, this is the crop. Um, and then as we go, you know, continue going on that farm, we'll keep getting images and keep pushing those to get labeled,
Hmm.
um, just so we can keep learning. But really, it takes like 2 days for us to go into a new crop, which is really incredible.
Yeah, that's really quick. So it sounds like, I mean, it's still learning. I mean, it's not like you just upload those first 100 images and it's done. I mean, it's still collecting
Right.
images and still learning.
Yeah, and like when we're in production, we're sampling the field, to get an even distribution. So we, in case there's some specific weed at the northwest corner.
Okay. So how exactly does this whole autonomous weeder work? Like, how often does it get sent out? Is it completely autonomous? Like you set a time for it to go, and then how does it get its power and kind of all that good stuff?
Yeah, so above the lasers, if you look at pictures, like there's basically a white cabin. Inside there, there's a 74 horsepower Cummins diesel engine.
Okay.
So you feed it diesel. It's got enough for 24 hours of operation, a little more, just so that the idea was you touch it one time a day. And then that drives a generator for all the power for the computers, lasers, all that. And then it has another PTO shaft that runs a hydraulic stack. And so all of our motors, we have four-wheel drive, they're all hydraulic. And then we have some steering actuators that are also hydraulic. Um, and then, so you're asking about, how does daily operation look? Um, we're there most of the time, somebody from Carbon, because we're honestly just moving so fast and going into new crops and new regions, that we're there to check its performance, make sure it's killing all the weeds that are out there and not shooting any of the crop. But as far as the autonomy, it's going up and down the rows by itself. It turns around at the end of the rows. Um, so it's more of a supervisory function. In some places like California actually require you to have somebody in the field. They don't actually allow fully autonomous things yet.
Oh, really? Why is that?
I mean, it's kind of like why you don't have full self-driving cars yet.
Yeah, that's true.
There's some risk associated, and so you know, they're not comfortable with that on public land. Because the robot could easily, in theory, go past the farm, or out the field and into a road or something. So they want eyes on it.
Okay. No, that makes sense. So I know I've seen pictures of it. It looks like right now it's kind of for smaller crops. So how can this work for, I would say, maybe like a corn or something that's super tall? So
Hmm.
I mean, what's the plans there? I mean, can it work for taller crops like that, or is this just kind of for something kind of a little bit lower to the ground?
Well, we're primarily focused on specialty crops like
Hmm.
onions, lettuce, carrots, broccoli, all that kind of stuff. Um, but in theory, there's no reason it can't work in corn or soy or wheat, especially in the early stage where it's most important to do the weeding,
Hmm.
because like that's the time when the crop is really competing with the weed for nutrients. And once it gets to a certain size, it's shading out the ground, and
Hmm.
so that's where we kind of don't need to continue weeding. We may learn something as we break into those different crops that could encourage us to come out with a different model that was specialty made for tall crops.
Hmm.
But
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That's pretty cool. And yeah, I mean, that's such a good point because especially like right after these plants are either planted or transplanted, I mean, that's when they're really going to be in danger of like weeds overtaking them. But once you've got like a
yeah,
tall
exactly.
crop like corn, you're usually going to be good from weeds. I mean,
Right.
usually. So I know when a lot of people see technology like this, they instantly get scared that's going to replace jobs. So, I mean, how do you guys view it? Is this here to replace jobs or to reduce inputs? And I mean, and also with this, you're creating more jobs for like you and everybody at Carbon. And so, what's your whole viewpoint on that?
Well, to begin with, it's not replacing jobs necessarily because there's a labor shortage in
Hmm.
farming. So we're actually supplementing and giving the farmers some sustainability, and reliable, like just some reliability in their operation. As far as some of the jobs, like the hand laborers that are in the fields, we'd like them to transition to more operating machinery type jobs, like the supervisory function of watching the robot. Um, but yeah, and it also creates a whole bunch of tech jobs in Seattle, and which is nice because it's good to see um, tech going into something like farming, not just making like a new Snapchat app or something.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I've seen a bunch of videos on like super, super small scale organic farms where they have like
Mhm.
this. It looks like a hospital bed, kind of, and the person will lay flat on it and they'll crawl around
Oh
picking up weeds.
yeah,
Have you seen that?
no, I've totally seen that. It's actually a
So
really great idea.
yeah, no, it's a great idea, but I mean, of course, that would be like nearly impossible to do for like 1,000 acre farm. And so this, I mean, this technology is basically that on a larger, larger scale.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, our real goal here is to help eliminate chemical usage,
Mm,
and that's not replacing anybody's job. It's
yeah, no,
replacing. Well, I
exactly.
guess
Yeah.
you could be replacing the chemical company's jobs.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, they've got millions of dollars. They can find something else to do. I mean,
Yeah.
so do you see like technology like this as the future? Because I know right now, I think it's Case IH are they're developing like driverless tractors. So you've got driverless tractors, autonomous weeding machines.
Hmm.
So do you think tech like this is going to be the future in ag?
I think it makes sense because there's just in every like job title in farming, there's a labor shortage. So
Hmm.
tractor drivers, hand weeders, everybody. I think if we don't do things like this, we're going to be in trouble with being able to sustain, you know, the country's food supply, um, or the world's rather. So it just makes sense. Like the technology is here. It's just making sure on our end that we listen to the farmer and you know give them what they need.
Mm, I like that. And speaking of that, I mean, what's the response been like from farmers where you've used it on their land? I mean, has it been good? Have they been have they had any like very helpful critiques about it?
Yeah, I mean it's been really cool to see it take off the way it has. I've run most of the demos, so we've done a couple seasons of like full season weeding, um, and onions, in New Mexico and Eastern Washington. Um, but about 3 months ago, we realized that basically every farmer wants to see it in their field, in their crop.
Hmm.
And so we had like demo days where they'd come see it in Washington, but then they're like, well, I need to see it in carrots, in California to believe you before buying. Because we're selling equipment. We're not doing a leasing or like a pay as you go, like
Hmm.
per acre model. Um, and I started doing demos in California and breaking into new crops. And it was just like, as soon as they saw it in their field and invited, like they immediately go and invite all of their coworkers, like all the higher ups at the farm, the decision makers, if I'm not already talking to that person, and then it's like basically the conversion rate from demo to sale has been really high. We're basically sold out for 2022 as well.
Oh, wow.
Like in addition to this year's being done, um, which is great. We're getting the kind of adoption that we knew that this was going to be the situation. So it's good to see that happening.
Yeah, and that's great that, I mean, once you're doing those in-person demos, I mean, people can see it on their property doing their crops, and they have that sort of buy-in from there. So that's awesome. There's been a good conversion ratio.
Yeah, I mean their eyes light up. This is like most of them are like, this is what we've been waiting for. You
Mm,
know, it's like,
that
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And so I would love this. So I don't have a farm. I've got a yard. Do you think like maybe in the future there could be a much smaller scale version of this, like going around your yard and taking care of weeds? I mean, do you think that might be something that might come of this maybe in the future?
We've toyed with the idea. Like my dad's asked for one. Like even just a handheld shooter version. You could go around instead of spraying chemicals. Um, we'd have to figure out the safety of it. Having a person hold a laser is a lot different than a robot with them aiming only down. Like that's where we get our safety. Um, it's gonna happen, like as a hobby project at least, and we'll see. You know how feasible that would be
Yeah,
for
that'd be super
consumers.
cool. I mean, I know that I've seen my sister has sent me a Snapchat of her neighbor in Germany. They have like it's like a Roomba, but it's a lawnmower, and so it just goes around their
Oh
yard
yeah,
cutting up
I think
everything.
Husqvarna does that, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I thought that was super cool, and so I've often wondered like when are we going to have those big weeders, kind of like how you have, but on a smaller scale, or maybe even do you see maybe one of those farmers kind of takes that big system home and they just let it do their yard or something? Of course, not in a commercial area, just like on their
I
homestead or
mean,
something.
I'd say goodbye. Like especially with the weight, you're gonna lose your grass.
That's true. You
So
might get rid of your weeds, but you're definitely going to be able to see where that thing went.
yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, what's been the biggest struggle during the whole development of this? Kind of getting people to get on board with lasers, or the technology behind it, or maybe the R&D. What's been the biggest
Um,
struggle?
well, I think it would be the fact that like the tech is just getting to the point where it's capable of doing this, like the computers and the cameras
Hmm.
and the lasers. I mean, those have been around for a while, but none of them were designed for a farm environment. And so we've, we've gone through like more iterations than I thought you would need to. But it's good that we moved so fast and broke so much stuff because we learned how to like ruggedize, a computer with 8 GPUs in it
Hmm.
that is like, you know, pretty expensive and sensitive to vibration, shock, heat, but we've broken everything in every possible way and found how to not break it anymore.
I mean,
The tubes are glass. They're about 6 feet long
oh
and
wow.
about I think 80 millimeters in diameter. So what's that like 5 inches, 4 inches? And so you can imagine that being pretty brittle, right? Like
Hmm.
that long of a thing. And so just you know we froze the tubes before we figured out we needed antifreeze and just a ton of. It's been good because our CEO Paul has pushed us super hard to get into the field like day one. We kept taking prototypes out there, breaking it, fixing it, making the new. We basically were always in this uh, stride of as soon as one is coming out of the fab shop, we're like designing the next one.
Mm.
Like it's no delay.
That's
So
awesome. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. I mean, because like you're saying, like a farming environment is going to be I mean, pretty tough, pretty unforgiving, and of course, you're gonna have all this tech in there. So what's the repair like? I mean, can you guys repair these things pretty quick, or is there a lot of downtime involved?
So by doing all this prototyping and breaking things, we learned which components could break, um, and the tubes are the number one thing. But not only can they break, which they don't. It's just a possibility, and there's so many of them um, that we wanted it to be really easy for the farmer to replace. So we made everything like that, like the lasers or the computer or all of our little packages. Everything is really nicely packaged and self-contained and modular. So
Mm.
it's like we just hired a VP of sales, and his first time out at the demo, out at seeing the robot at a demo, I just had him replace a tube. I was like, let's see how easy this is. I didn't tell him how to do it. He just opened the hatch. Okay, so there's water, two water lines, two power lines, and then you just flip a little latch and pull it out, put a new one in. Takes like 2 minutes.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah. So I mean, mechanical engineers, especially from the company I was previously at, do a pretty good job if they know something, you know, could be um, needing replaced, making it easy to replace.
I
Because
like that.
most of the time, especially in like startup world, you're gonna go and fix your own shit. So um, you just you go through those pains.
Yeah, that's kind of different from what you hear about. I mean, different large scale startup companies like a Tesla, to where they've got, of course, the whole right to repair thing, but replacing their
Hmm.
stuff or fixing their stuff is super duper complicated. And then you have people online like DIYers that are like, it doesn't need to be this complicated at all. And so it's good you guys have made it super simple to replace these things, which are, I mean, super tech savvy, super advanced, but still pretty relatively easy to replace and fix.
Yeah, I really don't necessarily understand the reason for locking people out of that kind of stuff. It's definitely not our philosophy. We want, I mean, if the farmer can replace it, like immediately without having to call us, that's way better for our product in the end. But the outlook on our product
Oh,
and
absolutely. I mean,
the customer happiness.
yeah, I mean, even like companies like John Deere, I mean, they have the whole right to repair thing and that going on. So, I mean, that's something that you guys are definitely beating the multi-million dollar companies at. So that's good to hear. Um, so what do you think about? I've seen more and more ag tech startups like this kind of booming in the past decade. And so, I mean, what do you think kind of started that? Like just kind of Silicon Valley and everybody started to want to have their own impact on the environment and all this new technology came out. What do you think kind of inspired all this in ag tech?
Yeah, I think it's driven by like the fact that in general, I think people want to do stuff that's good, like in general, um, good for the earth or good for people or good for their friends. Um, and I think tech maybe got so heavily um, involved with like maybe stuff that's a little less important.
Mhm.
Like making some app that doesn't actually increase uh, like life's happiness. um, so I imagine there's just a lot of people that were like, I want to do something good, um, and there's all this tech coming out, deep learning and all that stuff. Um, and farming is just, I think farming has always been innovative. Like if you go to a farm, you just see like 10,000 new different things. Um, and so, from a mechanical engineer standpoint, that sounds like a lot of fun. Designing stuff like that, especially because farmers are or like they're okay with a little bit of risk.
Mm.
And so these things can look like death traps, like most of the stuff on a farm. Um, and then I think from the software side, uh, like I said, I think it's just people wanted to do something good.
I like that. So do you have like an ag or farming background, or is this kind of all kind of new to you when you started this or when you joined in?
It was totally new to me, and I've loved the journey of like learning about farming. because I don't think I would have ever gotten that experience just
Mm.
living in Seattle, working at a aerospace automation company. Um, Shay Myers always jokes about the buyer who asked to see the onion tree or whatever. Um,
Yeah, I love that
and so
joke. Yeah.
I always think about that. But I have spent a significant amount of time at the farms, and I really enjoy talking to the farmers and just seeing all the varying ways they can do their operations, and they're just super good people. Like I haven't met one farmer I didn't like. Um, they're so willing to jump in a truck with you and show you their farm for like 4 hours and talk about stuff. Just at the drop of a hat.
That's awesome. Yeah,
So
I
it's
mean,
pretty
that's
cool.
quite a big shift from aerospace to kind of working in the ag tech world. So, has it made you think more and more about kind of like where your food comes from, and have you thought any more about it, like whenever you go to a grocery store or
Absolutely,
anything?
absolutely, yeah. And I mean, I've always kind of leaned towards organic, and I definitely go for organic when I can now. Um, but I also try and encourage like my friends, understanding of farming. So I take a billion pictures and I explain things to them and kind of show them like the pains that farmers, go through. So it's
Yeah, that's cool. I like that. Yeah, I mean, that's so fun. We went to a chocolate farm in Hawaii, and we actually interviewed them on the show. And I mean, they were super nice. They gave us like the behind the scenes tour of everything. And
hmm
so, I mean, it's just cool when you finally meet the people that make your food. It makes it that much more relatable. And you're like, hey, here's the people behind my food. I need to tell my friends about this. And so, I've been trying to tell all of my friends and family about them, and they're starting to buy their chocolate. So it's cool. I mean,
hmm
it's just like those little personal relationships that kind of bridge the gap between farmers and consumers, which is pretty cool.
yeah, I love going for lettuce that is from a farm I've been to. That's a weird feeling. I don't think most people in the I don't think most people in the country probably know exactly where the food's coming from.
Oh yeah, yeah, no, 100%. And so, do you think, like, for farmers that use this technology, do you think they might be able to use it for their marketing? Like, hey, we're
Oh,
reducing spraying, we're using autonomous weeders. Here's how it's helping the environment.
absolutely. I have this idea to have like a laser weeded sticker that they could put on their produce,
Oh, that'd be
like
cool.
either on the bag or on like the apple or whatever, um, and have that be kind of something that like society goes for instead of and knows that that means there's no chemicals
Hmm.
or at least no herbicides used.
Yeah. No, that's such a good idea. I mean, could something like this kind of work for pests also? I mean, if you might have like a pest outbreak, you can maybe use something to where it targets just the bad pests for a crop.
There's no reason it can't. Yeah, we've had farmers ask us about different types of beetles, and we
Hmm.
know the deep learning can detect it, but we haven't spent a lot of time figuring out how much time, like laser time, you would need to do to kill whatever beetle. Um, but I'm sure we're going to be doing it at some point.
Yeah. I mean,
Somebody's going to ask for it.
I can imagine just like little turrets on top of this autonomous weeder where like as the bugs fly by, it
hmm
just kind of zaps them. I mean, that'd be pretty cool. Be a little deadly,
Yeah,
but it would look pretty badass.
it's super fun to watch. Like I've spent I don't know how many hours behind that thing, walking and looking at the lasers running. And if you look at our YouTube, it's just so cool. Like it
Oh,
looks like a little light show.
that I haven't looked at the YouTube yet, but I'm gonna have to go look at it and just kind of see what that looks like.
But yeah, it's insane to watch it work in like the high density crops like spinach and chards because you can't even see the weeds a lot of the time
Hmm.
because it's so dense. But the robot's seeing it and using that super you know surgical laser to get in between and kill the weeds.
Yeah, all about precision. I mean, a lot more precise than just blanket spraying chemicals, whether with a crop duster or a spray or anything.
Mm,
Plus, it
yep.
looks cool. That's so cool.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
John, this has been awesome, man. If people want to learn more about Carbon Robotics, where can they go to learn about you guys and kind of see how the whole development's going for the autonomous weeder?
Yeah. So we have a really great website, carbonrobotics.com. That'll link you over to like YouTube and all that kind of stuff, Twitter, Instagram. And on the website, you can click, contact us. And I read a lot of those, and then I'll reach out. And, if somebody's looking to do a demo at their farm, we'll do that, set that up, or invite you to a demo nearby.
So are y'all pretty much available around the US, or is there any particular area y'all focus more on?
We are focused for the 2022 season, or basically the entire year, for West Coast. We've got customers in Washington, Oregon, California, Arizona, New Mexico is kind of our farthest. And we're probably going to wrap that up so that we can build out that support organization. That's going to be the most critical thing for the next year. We
Mhm.
have technology that works. We need to make sure we support it well, and the farms are happy. Um, but 2023 will probably break into Midwest, um, and then I think the plan is to go international after that.
Oh, awesome. Well, that'll be
Yeah,
exciting. I mean, yeah, I can't wait to see you guys take over the US, and I can't wait to see more of these on farms. I'm gonna start looking up YouTube videos
yeah,
now, and I'm gonna look up that video you said. I think this is, I mean, super neat. It's the perfect blending of agriculture and technology. I mean, it's a problem we've had for years and such a great answer to it.
yeah. There's just so much like tailwind. Like it's good for the planet. It's good for humans. Farmers love it. Our customers love it. Everybody wants to work here because it's super cool. It's badass. You're working on a laser weeding robot.
Oh yeah. I
Um,
mean, that's not something you
there's
hear
just
about every day.
there's like I can't find a problem with the situation. I
Yeah.
love working here. So
Well, that's awesome. That's good to hear. I'm glad you like it. I'm glad you like this job. I think this is super cool. Well, we'll have to touch base with you guys soon. Maybe 2022, whenever you guys are slowly growing, we might have to touch base with y'all again. But thanks so much for coming on the
yeah,
show, John.
thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.